Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Boy, I got bad news for you today. It finally hit that the New Mexico House roundhouse session put the House Bill 137 to the floor. So what this is it is called the Gas-Operated Semi-Automatic Firearms Exclusion Act. In it, it is basically, if you got to read what Martin Heydrich is proposing on a national level, it's ripped straight from the text from there. They're very explicit about what semi-automatic firearms are, what the terms are. Um, they exclude long stroke gas pistons, so that's anything like an AK. They mention short stroke gas piston. That's anything like an AR-18, a G36, HKG 36. That is any of the newer guns like the uh, Jackal, the Scar, anything like that would be short stroke gas piston. HK 416, 417, both of those. It even gets so granular that it actually talks about how, um, like a roller delay lock system would work. It talks about how the bolt, if gas can be pressed on the bolt until such time pressure is released, and then it will cycle the gun where it causes other parts to release and cycle the gun. So they're talking about HKG 30 G3s, HK93s, HK91, MP5s, anything that's roller delayed. This only allows for anything 22 caliber or lower that is a blowback action for semi-automatic. And they still have to be limited to 10 rounds. So in this bill, they rolled everything together. So they have a magazine ban. This is a magazine ban also. Their magazines can't have to be, if they are attached to the gun, so like the SKS or the M1 Garand, and they hold 10 rounds, they can't hold any more than that, then they're okay in their eyes, which makes no sense to me. But anyway, I digress. It gets very much into the weeds. Of course, anyone who's in law enforcement or part of the atomic energy groups, they are excluded from this because they're better than us. That's at least how our governor sees it. This is all done in the guise of protecting the populace. You know, New Mexico, our crime rate is actually up versus the national average. I wonder why. It wouldn't have nothing to do with the bail reform that I mentioned and talked about way before time. And now they're trying to repeal those bail reforms, and they're also trying to put stiffer penalties in for crimes in New Mexico, and that makes a lot of sense. They're even trying to reenact the death penalty in New Mexico, and I'm torn on that. Having the option to have a stiffer penalty than life in prison, I understand. I, however, don't have any faith in the government or the state. When I say state, I mean the government in general, any government agency, that they would have the ability to properly execute someone or have the ability to do it. And what I mean by that is, if they get this wrong, this is someone's life. And I have a hard time thinking the government, as incompetent as they have been proven after the last 5 years, if you've lived through the COVID stuff, if you lived through everything that's been happening in the United States, you're seeing government in action right now that you need to be very cognizant of. And if you give up these rights, you have nothing to fight with. Now, it's interesting in this bill, I've read through it multiple times now. It's very reminiscent of the Illinois bill, in that my reading of it, my understanding of it, is it also looks like they're wanting you to register any guns you've had previous to this. And if you deactivate them, meaning like you make it a straight pull single action gun, so you can do that with an AR-15. You can swap out the gas block and to where it just bleeds off, doesn't bleed off any gas, and cycle the action. And you can make it a straight pulled single shot gun, or a bolt action gun, basically. Those are exempt, but you have to show the process you did that. Now, it gets really complicated, and I'm not a lawyer, and no matter how many times I read it, I don't know what's changed with my mind reading lately, or with my reading skills lately. that as I read it, it seems like we're all grandfathered in if you already have these. But again, I'm not going to take that 100% because it looks like it's an overall ban. There's nothing in here that tells you what you're supposed to do with firearms you already own. So that's why I'm guessing that you're still grandfathered in. What is interesting, though, is I see something that if you do have a normal capacity magazine, you're supposed to serialize these and have a date code that shows that they were manufactured before January 1 of 2025. So I don't know how you would do that for certain magazines, especially if they came from Russia or they came from other parts of the world where they may not have as strict of a requirement to label them with a date code. Uh, I have some German ones. Uh, Full disclosure, German ones are very good about keeping date codes. Russians are pretty good about that on their rifles, but not so much on their magazines, because who would date code a magazine? You just care that you have a magazine. I'm sure that since there's other restrictions in other states, that things like Magpul probably have a date code somewhere on them, but I've never seen a serial number on a magazine. And this is legislation, House Bill 137, again, requires you to do that. So even if you did it with an electro pencil, I think that would be acceptable if you're wanting to comply with this. What do I think the odds of this actually passing in the bill right now, or in the roundhouse right now in the current session? I actually think it's pretty low. There is a chance that it will pass because the Democrats, or the leftists, I should say, and they're not even Democrats, they're leftists, they're communists, in the roundhouse have both chambers. They have the House and the Senate. So we need to call our reps, let them know that this is not okay, and that we're not on board with this. The other one that they add was, I mentioned it before, it's the Firearms Accountability Act. What they're doing, and I've said this before also, it's like if a drunk driver was driving a Ford pickup truck, wrecked and killed a family, and then that family, their survivors, sued Ford. It's the same thing that they're trying to do with the 2A guys. So anyone that manufactures firearms, they're wanting to go after them wholeheartedly to put them out of business. Because they know they're on shaky ground and trying to do this stuff all backwards, that the odds of them actually passing quote-unquote meaningful gun control are pretty low because there's just not an appetite for it. They're after the COVID stuff, and after we actually got into that stuff, this is why I'm kind of thankful for COVID, is even people in California were shocked when they said, we're not responding to calls right now during the riots and during COVID. That showed you right there that you're on your own. You know, you are your own first responder here. And for those of us in the 2A community, we've known this for a long time, and that's part of why we became 2A guys. A lot of us became 2A guys because we just like the stuff. We like the sport. We like the guns. It's kind of ingrained in the American culture. It's also ingrained in American culture to be anti-government. Despite what a lot of statists will say right now, our country was founded by rebels and rebellion. So just because you back the blue, well, the blue's now going to be the guys that come and get your guns. I've said this for years now, that if you're a statist, a complete statist, and you've not looked at what's happened in the last 3 to 5 years in our government and our country, and you're still 100% back the blue, you need to realize very quickly and correctly that who's coming after them. Now, do I see that from local law enforcement? In my area, no. In fact, I would see the counter to that. I fully see, and I know Shane's down there right now for the session, he's probably organizing some sort of protest from the Sheriff's Association in New Mexico, saying this isn't going to help. What we need is reforms to how they deal with people that have been caught multiple times, offenders that have been arrested multiple times. We need that more than we need this. So while they're trying to do this stuff, there's also the other hope that I have, that on the federal level, there is enough ground being gained, especially for like the 21 and older to buy a gun. That's already been ruled unconstitutional. So winning that in New Mexico Supreme Court should be a slam dunk because it's already had legal precedent at the national level. So a lot of this is bluster, in my humble opinion, that they're trying to do to get people elected again because we're in an election season. This is also a shorter session. So they're not going to get through right now, currently on their docket. On the House side alone, there was over 200 or 100 and 153 or 100 and no, but it's grown and it'll continue to grow. I've seen it grow up to 200 bills. 181 different bills on the House side, and on the Senate side, there are right now only 125. And a lot of them, what has to happen, if you don't know the process, please take a civics class or please refresh your civics learning, is a bill has to clear the House and the Senate, either in the state, well, for the state and in the federal level, it has to do the same thing. So they have to have a mirror version of this from the House to the Senate. I have not seen the Senate one drop, and it's late enough in the session call right now. That's what I was expecting, is that they know that the debate for the budget stuff is going to take a long time. And they're still going to be discussing that because there's been more added to try to detract or to pull away for budget allocation for different things, different processes, different projects that they have in New Mexico. And in doing so, there's always those arguments because people want their slice of the pie. Now, why do I say that there's a low probability this is going to get passed? Because the American public, New Mexicans specifically, have a low appetite for this. But having both House and Senate in New Mexico has a potential that they could actually pass this. We need to light up the call centers, call the roundhouse, call your reps, call your senators. You can go to New Mexico legis.gov and you can actually look at that website. So restate that, www.nmlegis.gov, and you can look up your representatives there by your address, by the county, by your literal districts. If you don't know your voter stuff, you can use this website without having to know all your voter stuff. That would show you those individual races and bring up your individual rep or your individual state senator. Call them, email them. I've done that already. I intend on doing it again. I already know, having talked to my reps and my senators publicly here, personally here in Northwest New Mexico, they're not behind this, and they knew this was coming. So they're going to do that, but I have Republican senators and representatives that are probably on the minority side anyway. So they're fighting an uphill battle already. We have to call the roundhouse. We got to call the governor and make it untenable. And she's so stubborn right now, and she's so set because she's trying to get, she was just reelected, I think, last year. So she's got another 3 years here before she's out of office. She cannot run for a Senate or rep again for New Mexico because she's already done it. She's looking for something in some sort of advisory level or some cabinet level position in the next administration if it falls and we end up with a Democrat again. Speaking of which, there's a poll that came out that shows that 58% of Americans, if Trump is found guilty of one of the 91 counts that he has, some of those are felonies, say they won't vote for him. What's important about that is it was 28% or 32% of the independents, and the independents right now are going to swing the election one way or another. They don't have any party affiliation, and they're not married to Trump like some people are. I'm not. Me personally, he's our best option right now. I would hope we'd had a better option. The reason why, as I said, there's enough taint around him, not because of the person he is, just because of the controversy around him. You have people that are die-hard, in-the-wool, brainwashed to hate him, and you have the opposite also, that are dyed-in-the-wool, loyal to the soil to the man, even though he's not perfect. And I have a problem with anyone that's willing to do that to a politician, because politicians are idiots. After years of being a person that I would say probably was loyal to the soil for some people, especially politicians, I realized that they're not anywhere near their A game. Um, if you listen to a politician talk about guns because it's something you know, but something you're interested in because you're listening to this podcast, by the way, thank you. Um, you know when they talk about full semi-automatic, that's not a thing. That these people are idiots. So what other things have they talked about that they've introduced in legislation are they just as ignorant about, but they seem like they're educated about? To the uninitiated in the 2A world, using those buzzwords, full semi-automatic, using those to people that aren't familiar with firearms, familiar with the 2A, what that does is it adds some legitimacy to them because it sounds like they know what they're talking about. In reality, they don't know a damn thing about it, and we know it. And it's very apparent. What they did here is they had to, with House Bill 137, is they had to have some turncoats, some people that did a lot of research, Martin Heinrich being one of them. Because they looked at how the gun actually functions and what they're going after, since they haven't been able to ban it by features. So having a pistol grip, by having a certain type of stock, specifically the AR-15 telescoping stock, that was something they were going after because they thought that made the gun more lethal and more concealable. It doesn't. What they're trying to do is go after the actual mechanism itself of how the gun functions. And in doing so, it is so technically oriented that there are a lot of idiots in the world that are going to just check off on this and say, fine. There's a lot of boomers in the world who are, you don't need 100 rounds to go deer hunting. Well, this isn't about deer hunting. It's never been about deer hunting. The 2A has never been about deer hunting. It has always been about defending ourselves from tyranny. And if you haven't paid attention to what's been going on in the government in the last 5 years to show how tyrannical they can be, you're not paying attention. We were literally locked in our house for 3 years for something that turned out to be a really bad flu. Now, a lot of people died if they had complications, and I'm very sorry for that, and I pray for them. But in reality is, we shouldn't have stopped the world from turning because of what happened. And whether we should have never been forced to take a shot, because the efficacy, how effective the shot is, because I can't nail that word right now, was never fully determined. We took an experimental shot. I did. That was because I was working for a K-12 school district at the time. I still would have done it, probably because I was hoping that this was the magic bullet that could help some people if it was a real deal. And at the time, I was also very much a statist in some ways. The main reason, the overriding reason why I got it, was because I knew at some point they were going to force this on my kids. And before my kid ever does anything like this that could possibly hurt them, especially one of them has heart issues already, I was going to take it. Because I'll be damned if I let one of my kids go before me. Especially if we don't know what the repercussions are going to be. Now, I haven't had any repercussions that I know of. That being said, I don't know that it was good for me. Because I've had COVID 3 times now. And I had the first 2 shots and still nothing. I still got sick. So they didn't work. It was a pointless endeavor in my opinion. Now, do I believe in all the conspiracy stuffs around the shot? No. There's a lot of stuff around that there's no way. Number one is the one that I mentioned before about the cell phone towers putting off a frequency to activate some nanoparticle in the shot. Working in the wireless world, meaning messing with Wi-Fi antennas, messing with cell phones for at least 15 years of my life, what they were saying was pure fiction. The reason why I say that, if you work in any kind of office environment, you've been exposed to 5G radiation a lot longer than you are aware of before cell phones started using 5G. So there is absolutely no way in hell it was going to be that doomsday killer thing. But I digress. Call your reps, call your senators in the roundhouse in New Mexico if you're from New Mexico. Make sure to call the ones in the national houses also, because they need to know our stance and they need to be ready for their session. Their session started or has start or about to start. I think they had a little bit of a break. They've been worried about the economy or the omnibus bills to fund the government. They've kicked the can down the road again on the national level. It looks like FPC and GOA, more specifically GOA, are finally putting the death knell in the pistol brace rule because of the Fifth Circuit's ruling on the pistol braces, and it's now case law for that, where they filed a permanent injunction on behalf of anyone that basically owns a pistol brace. They have legal standing now to ask for summary judgment, and that's what they're doing, which should end the debate on whether pistol braces are legal or not. And then we're on to the next thing. Chevron deference case, I mentioned that last podcast. That case is progressing through the Supreme Court. And from what I am hearing and what I am reading from multiple legal sites, not myself, not again, I'm not a legal scholar and I'm not a lawyer. These guys are saying that actually have the legal chops say it looks like Chevron deference is about to go the way of the dodo also. But we'll see what happens in court, because it looks like in that the Raimundo case, I believe is what it's called, looks like the litigators for Merrick Garland aren't doing their job, and they're about to get handed another loss. And while this one has to do with the EPA, it has far-reaching effects in the 2A and the rest of the world. Because if the EPA has found out that they can't use Chevron deference to make law without going through Congress, that means that no other alphabet agency can do that. And that is a good thing. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.